So, the aim of today's revision session is to look at how a country goes from basically improving its population, increasing its population. The case study which we look at for this is Singapore. And what you can see on the screen is two images in Singapore. We've got what it used to look like 40 years ago and what it looks like today. And the consequences of a country developing at such a rapid rate, it's had quite a significant impact on its population. So, going to look at Singapore population growth and what the Singapore government are doing to actually bring about the increase in their population. So Singapore is a very small state on the Malay Peninsula in Southeast Asia. It is also highly developed and one of the largest ports in the world. It also has several other things going for it. One of the key things it has is a significant ageing population, and this is due to having a very highly educated population, and consequently they're choosing to value their careers and not have as many children as they once used to. At one point in time, Singapore had a population problem, and so what the government did to sort out their population growth problem was they introduced a policy called two is enough. This was very, very successful, and they educated their population so well that they ended up with a population which was in crisis, and their birth rate went down to 9 per thousand at one point in time. And as a consequence, the government needed to introduce a population growth policy. And the policy that they introduced was the 3 or more policy. And in Singapore, this was a policy designed to encourage families to have children, and they needed it because they were running out of workforce and they ended up with an aging population, and it was leading to problems including running out of taxes to pay for future development of the country. So you need to understand both the incentives and disincentives of the policy. An incentive is something which is positive, which is designed to actually encourage people to have children. In Singapore, there were a couple of things which were done. First off, they introduced a scheme which enabled people to pay for support children's upbringing. And so the government paid people to effectively have children. And they paid $3,000 for the first 2 children and then $6,000 for the second 2 children. Now you're encouraged to add in specific detail into your work, so that's the kind of thing you should be adding. Okay, another thing they did was they gave paid maternity leave for 3 months for the mothers and 3 days for the fathers. They also operated a policy where they opened up savings accounts, where the government basically matched money put into the account, and this went up to $6,000 as well, which was a savings account for the child for the future. They also brought in some disincentives, and these were things such as if you didn't have 3 children, you couldn't get a larger house, so you always ended up living in smaller accommodation the smaller the family you had, no matter how much money you earned. Other things they did was they brought in policies to discourage people from having abortions, and there was education policies which went on with this. Okay, now you should have notes from your lesson, so this should have just been a little bit of revision of this topic for you. So what kind of questions can you be asked? Well, typically this is going to come up as a 6-mark question. This is the question from June 2010, and you had to choose a country which is trying to increase its birth rate, and obviously your example is Singapore. And then you had to explain the methods used by the country to increase its birth rate. Pause the video and develop your answer to the question. You should be aiming to write at least 3 points, including specific detail, mentioning both incentives and disincentives. So pause the video, answer the question. So, now take the opportunity to mark it. Now I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom of this, and this is the level 3 answer. This is what we should be aiming for. Key thing, it has an explicit answer. That means you need to be talking about the child savings scheme, the maternity and paternity leave, the larger apartments, the cash gifts, okay? So this was something I didn't mention, but you get 5 days paid childcare leave a year, so you can actually look after your children. And they must be specific. Now the examiner is looking for this, so you need to be making sure that there is also explanation of the incentive. So it's not just going that they had $6,000, but you're also explaining the significance of that and why it was potentially effective. So read through your answer and give it a level of what you think it is, and then give it a mark as well. Okay, and that finishes this screen capture.